One of my favorite aspects of civilization games is the technology tree, starting off with barely anything to control and constantly unlocking new and exciting things to interact with and gaining the advantage over your enemies. But there are a few ways I could implement them. There is the classical route of civilization games, but I feel like that takes away from the sense of discovery and mystery that real civilizations must have been through, trying to advance their technologies, uncovering new and exciting ideas, and not knowing what they'll find out next. Sure, they would strive to tackling certain issues, but I doubt that the kings of ancient world could tell their advisors simply to focus on nukes and slowly research everything till then. Also, I see no reason for nukes to be dependent on things like banking. Another aspect comes from games like Stellaris. You select your tech from a list of basically cards. They come at random, and I do like this approach. It adds a sense of mystery and the unknown. So both systems have their advantages and disadvantages. If I go the civilization route, sure, I lose the sense of mystery, but I do gain something important. For strategy games in particular, it's the ability to plan in advance, to choose a specific plan and execute on it with precision. Stellaris takes away that precision, thus arguably weakening the strategic decision making in selecting your technology. I think I can hopefully mix both of these together.
I will make you something better.
What if I had a tree, just like civilization, but you don't know all of the technologies in advance? This could work, but it creates a design problem. What prevents people from just opening a different tab on their computer and seeing all of the discovered tech tree? You could consider this cheating in a way, and I wouldn't want you to do that, since it distracts from the experience. But on the other hand, the only right way to play is the way the player decides to play. So it's my responsibility as a designer to subtly guide you to the fun, and not force you there. Whilst I was contemplating this issue, I saw a video by Mark Brown from Game Maker's Toolkit. It was about Bolero, and it's not really a game that I would personally play, but I enjoyed his videos and thus decided to give it a watch nonetheless. To my surprise, it talked about a cursed design problem, as they called it, the exact same problem I was facing. You see, the issue at its core is that the designer is trying to balance the player experience with the information provided. Within the video, no clear solution was honestly achieved, and I feel like Bolero in itself is trying to fix this issue, but not necessarily found a way to do so within its own game constraints. For me, my constraints are different, however, and it inspired me to maybe interpret the problem in a bit of a different way. Stellaris doesn't struggle from this issue, because not only does it take away the information from the player, it also takes away control. You can't select the unknown tech you want by knowing its location, for example. Technologies are offered to you as a random selection from effectively a stack of cards. But as I said, I still wanted the predictable tree structure. So I realized, why would having the tree require player control? So I created what I like to call the discovery mechanic. You can only see the unknown text you can directly research currently. Everything beyond that is covered, almost as if it's a fog of war. As you research a technology, you get to see the research that is dependent on it, so an extra layer down into the research tree. But you don't select what you discover. Instead, discoveries happen at random. Discovery is just a way for you to utilize your existing research points and uncover the next level of technologies as you go further. The benefit is you still have a strategic layer of control by deciding whether to research a particular technology right away or spend effort discovering new technologies. You could, if you want to, spend all of your time discovering till you see everything currently available, and only then select what you feel like is the most optimal tech currently. Or you could research the first thing you discover, and thus constantly keep researching new and exciting things at the expense of not necessarily going through a direct or particular path. This, I think, solves the issue to an extent. You don't need to have the tech tree on a second monitor. It doesn't necessarily help you. You do still need to discover the technologies and go for the tree that way. You could still beeline towards an advanced technology if you want to, if you know that path of the tree and if you discover everything on your way and only research the text throughout that line. But I do feel like I am discouraging that way of play to an extent. Again, you still have the option of not removing it or forcing you to play a certain way, but I'm just making, let's say, the optimal way of playing a bit more fun in my opinion. However, this is just my opinion and I haven't yet playtested it. So I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below or on my Discord channel. And if you can come up with something better, that's great. I'd love to hear. In the last video, I mentioned that I had multiple types of research available. And I gave a little sneak peek based on a draft paper I was working on. So currently they are divine, druidic, magic, material, and social. Each are generated from their own buildings and have their own associated technologies. Divine is mostly generated through religious buildings like temples, and thus you need to have a good relationship with the religious guild, or take them over. This research line unlocks certain spells and features, such as being able to see in the future, which can help you up with the research itself. It can help you speed up the discovery process, for example, or see a deeper layer ahead in the research tree. It can also allow you to heal people and summon divine beings to aid you. Druidic technology is mostly generated by foragers, herbalists, barns and farms even. Basically anything that cultivates or interacts with living things. It also unlocks spells and buildings, more focused on improving food output and production from natural sources, like the sea or forests. Magical technology is mostly generated by the Mages College and enchanter buildings that make magical items. It primarily unlocks new spells, absent from the other trees, and it's also essential in aiding your production of mana, the resource you need to cast spells. Material research is generated by forges, blacksmiths, and other production buildings. It unlocks new tools or better production methods. It can be the backbone of your economy, but also your military. This is the more classical Civ tech tree style, and it's mostly absent of magical spells. Finally, social research is generated by theaters, inns, markets, or public forums. It unlocks new policies, mainly for the council to vote on, as well as new societal concepts, such as banking, trade, or foreign diplomacy. Anything intangible, basically. It's pretty similar to the cultural tree in Civilization 6. At first I thought the idea of the separate research types is unique and new, but then I remembered a game that I've been talking about for a while in this video, and that's Stellaris. It has an almost identical system with 3 research types. I had totally forgotten about it, and it comes to show how sometimes we can think of an original idea only to realize that it's our subconscious retrieving familiar ideas from memory. There is a saying that everything's a remix, and I can see that now. I hope I can find inspiration from that system to make it better, and I still am making something I think is pretty unique in a way, being a fantasy setting and operating over a different scope. But again, I do want to know what you think. Do you like this aspect from Stellaris, or do you think that it's just unnecessarily complicated, and a single tech tree resource would just be better? Do keep in mind, however, that the game, you are the technological guildmaster, so it's the most essential part of your job description. Hence why I feel like I need to expand its complexity, but hopefully offer interesting options and strategic decisions for you to make. With the design out of the way, I started the implementation. I had budgeted 4 hours to work on the tech tree, as a prototype level at least, and was hoping to finish both it and the council system this week. Now I know this was way too optimistic. Even as a full-time indie game dev, I struggle to maintain the work hours I really should be, and I underestimated the time I need to finish the tasks. Starting next week, I'll have to shift even to a part-time schedule, as I'm going to be working on another startup venture with a friend of mine. But I hope doing so can balance the risks of doing a single project like Vuno, whilst at the same time keeping my creative freedom over it and separating it from my other types of work. This, however, doesn't mean I will slow down, hopefully. If anything, I hope I can ramp up as I get more used to Godot and the overall workflow. Not to mention that I will remain committed to making one video every single week. I started working on the UI, and I want the player to be able to navigate the tree. So I created these nodes and found some useful code online for automatically creating lines connecting them. It already started to look like a tree, but now I wanted to let the player move along the tree both horizontally, as I imagine over time it can be quite broad, especially with 5 different resources for technology. And a single technology might depend on multiple resources even. It can also get quite deep as a research tree, as unlike a real-world setting where I'm limited by the technologies we already know about, I can go with pretty wacky technology ideas, and I already have a lot of ideas floating around. So the first idea was to make it a scrollable interface. This was way easier to implement than in Unity, which seems to be a recurring theme here. But I couldn't pan within the view, and there might be a way to enable that behavior, but I really couldn't find it. And also I wanted to be able to zoom in and out, not necessarily just move left and right or up and down when I scroll. So I didn't feel like this was the best approach. I instead looked into sub-viewports. I never used them in Unity, but ironically I have experience with them in OpenGL and C++. So Godot, however, handles them very nicely, I believe. It was really easy to set up, and I have more or less total control over the scene, how it shows up inside the menu. This allowed me to do something pretty cool, and move within the tree using my custom camera. I could zoom in and out now, and move using the WASD keys. But there was a small issue, and that's the fact that the input was controlling both of the cameras at the same time. So while the menu was open, I would also be moving the camera on the world view. So I needed a way to decide which camera should currently take the input. So I may or may not have spent 2 hours just making an input manager to determine which camera currently was in focus, and only allowed that one to take the user input. This was an unexpected task I didn't think I'd need to do, and it comes to show that we can't really plan everything. But I was happy, and the end result I think looks pretty cool. So I then needed to make this UI actually do something. I spent hours on my technology manager. However, sadly, I'm not done yet. I wish I could show it off working this week, but now both this and the council are getting pushed again. I also can't focus on them next week, since I do want to be able to do something new and share something new every single devlog, as opposed to just finishing up or wrapping up things that I should have finished a week earlier. If the game concept sounds interesting, leave a like and subscribe to this video. Next week, I will be sharing my magic system, spells and different effects. That makes the 3 main game mechanics pretty much complete, and thus the core game loop of voting in the council, conducting research, and casting spells would be over. After that, I will hopefully share my secondary game loop of the city simulation and the roguelike elements with the meta progression. I will do my best to catch up on the unfinished tasks and have a playable demo for you as soon as possible, so that you can all enjoy hopefully. Until then, thank you so much for 100 subscribers, it really means a lot to me, and thank you all for watching.